How who's next going to reach back out? You know, or should you? Yeah, I was considering that too. Yeah, yeah. Hi, hello, ma'am. How are you? You surviving? Our school is out. Our school is eating Olive Garden. And Literacy tonight. So,
when is it right now?
Yeah, Farley and I are taking with the team. We're here and they're chowing down the phone. Having literacy night and down and all that kind of stuff. They're doing book tasting. Book tasting.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started in a couple minutes. We all know why we're here. The board voted on Monday to consolidate 3 elementary schools and 1 middle school. So we're going to get into all of that as we get this meeting started. But before we start, I want to say something. We realize that this is a hard task. It's very personal for all of us. As it relates to talking about schools being consolidated, schools closing and whatnot. Schools aren't just a building. There are relationships involved. There's culture involved, memories, all of that stuff. And so that's not lost on us as administration as we go through this process. We are not being cavalier about it. We're definitely trying to be as considerate as possible when we talk about the possibility of consolidating campuses. And so we want to thank you all for the work that you've been doing and continue to do in this process. And so as we get started with this, I want to make sure that we understand that we are listening. We are open to feedback and what you guys are giving as input, but we also want to make sure you understand that there are additional factors that we have to consider as we get information, as we get feedback from you, that we then have to use to make what we feel is a final recommendation to the board. And so with that, I want to go ahead and get started. I want to recognize board members who are present. Ms. Canoyer and Ms. Stanford are here observing. Ms. Lee, I didn't see her walk in. Where's she? Oh, hey. Ms. Lee is here. Thank you all for being here. And then we also have the cabinet members sprinkled throughout. I think Dr. Toppin is back there. I don't know, everybody else skipped out on us, chickens. So our last meeting, January 12th, we did our second round of voting as it relates to the schools that are being considered for consolidation. We did have 5 schools that were voted on that kind of rose to the top. And I know many are here tonight because there are 2 campuses that were not a part of what the committee identified as top schools to be considered. Olympia was one that came on, that we brought on, and then also Woodlake Elementary. So those are 2 schools that had not been talked about previously. So we'll get into that and why that happened and why it's being considered. All right. This is the agenda. We're going to be presenting the demographer's presentation on, and some of you already kind of looked at what the maps would look like based on the scenarios that we were presented by the demographers. These maps are, if we do this, as far as the closure of campuses, then this is how the boundaries, the suggested boundaries would look from the demographers. So we'll go around, and if many of you haven't had an opportunity, we'll give opportunity for you to go around and kind of take a look at what the boundaries would look like. But the proposed plans, we do have elementary plan 4 is consolidation of Franz, Park Village, and Woodlake Elementary. Then we have plan 5, consolidation of Olympia, Park Village, and Woodlake. Plan 6 is Franz, Spring Meadows, and Woodlake. And then middle school, plan 1 is to consolidate Judson Middle. Middle school plan 2 is to consolidate Kitty Hawk STEM Academy. Let me say this about some of the schools and how we got here. I'll start with the middle schools because it's easier, and I'm sure there'll be a whole lot of questions. So we'll get to the question and answer time, and we'll be able to answer as best we can. When we looked at the middle schools, Kitty Hawk and Judson Middle rose to the top. There has been discussion about Kitty Hawk's current enrollment and how if you pull the JSTEM students out of Kitty Hawk, they have approximately 400 or so kids in that school. What happened for Kitty Hawk was when we opened Cibolo Creek, that pulled about 750 or so students from Kitty Hawk to go to Cibolo Creek. So that left a void at Kitty Hawk as far as how many students are in that building. We had to decide, how do we then backfill Kitty Hawk with that number of students leaving Kitty Hawk going to the new school that was opening this year at Cibolo Creek. So we had two choices. We could either do the boundaries again to push kids to Kitty Hawk from the JMS area, push them up to Kitty Hawk, or take a program that was at Judson Middle, which was JSTEM, and move it over to Kitty Hawk to then backfill the numbers that was left at Kitty Hawk. At the time, we felt it best to move JSTEM over to Kitty Hawk. That was about roughly 400 students. And so by doing that, we were able to kind of evenly distribute middle school students across the district. And so that left, and so yes, if you're wondering, if JSTEM wasn't at wasn't at Kitty Hawk right now, how many students would they have? They would have roughly about 430-ish or so students. But again, moving JSTEM then backfilled Kitty Hawk, left Judson Middle with about 700 or so students still at Judson Middle. So that's how we got here as far as the middle school distribution of students. Everybody with me? All right. So the Plan 4, consolidation of Franz, Park Village, and Woodlake. So when the demographer, when you all did your voting and we came up with the schools that we felt were the ones that rose to the top, we then had to send those names, those campuses, to the demographer, who then would run the scenarios of, okay, if we close these schools, how would the boundaries look? How would we redistribute students to the surrounding schools to make this happen? If you recall, Candlewood was one of the schools that was originally on the list. As the demographers ran the scenarios, they could not not necessarily evenly distribute, but they could not move. It was a challenge for the demographer to get the students out of Candlewood into the surrounding schools due to either enrollment of the other schools, i.e. Masters. Masters is already at a higher capacity, and so sending students from Candlewood to Masters wasn't going to be something that they were going to be able to do. Then we have, I believe it's Hopkins. Hopkins Elementary is another school that is close to Candlewood, and then I think it was Pshaw. And so again, our demographer, Zonda is our demographer. Mr. Templeton, and now he's moved on, but we have another gentleman by the name of Mr. Hudson. And as they ran the scenarios of trying to consolidate Candlewood on the south end of the district, they were running into issues as far as trying to evenly distribute Candlewood students in that neighborhood to the surrounding schools. The other issue with Candlewood is this. Candlewood, all of the students there are walkers. So if we consolidate that school, those students then have to, we'll have to bus all those students to wherever they're going to go as far as being a consolidated campus. So that increases transportation, that increases transportation time, that increases the number of buses that would be needed, all of that. And so that's another issue that came up for the demographer as they were trying to run the scenarios for Candlewood. The other issue, when we brought the information to our principals during our directors and principals meeting, we were getting feedback from them on different scenarios as far as consolidation. We got some feedback that we hadn't really heard before, which was, or we hadn't considered, which was choosing schools from each feeder pattern, choosing one school from each feeder pattern as far as the elementary schools are concerned. If you look at Ed Franz is the veterans feeder pattern. If you look at Park Village is the Judson High School feeder pattern. And then Woodlake Elementary is I believe it's the Wagner feeder pattern. Yes. So that was a feedback that we got from the directors and principals. That was some feedback that we got from them. Elementary Plan 5, Olympia came about. We had Ed Franz as one. I mean, we already had Ed Franz as a school, and then we said, okay, if we're going to consider feeder patterns, let's try and pick at least 2 schools from each feeder pattern that we would consider. Ed Franz was already one, and so as we looked at the other elementary schools, Olympia came up as the other possible school if we're going to consider 2 schools from each feeder pattern. Now you might say, well, you don't have 2 schools for Wagner in there. What's that about? Candlewood was the only school. Candlewood was the other second school of the Wagner feeder pattern, along with Woodlake Elementary, that was being considered. But as I just said to you, Candlewood, the scenario of Candlewood couldn't work based on the demographer's attempt to try and redistribute students and them getting back to us saying, hey, this Candlewood is just not going to work based on the surrounding schools and where we would be able to send those students as far as the other schools are concerned. So as far as the feeder patterns, we have 1 school for Wagner, we have 2 schools being considered for Judson feeder pattern, which is Park Village and, help me out, Dr. T. Spring Meadows. And then we have Ed Franz and Olympia for veterans. So that's how we got Olympia on the list, and that's how we got Woodlake Elementary on the list. Okay?
Where did Woodlake go?
I'm sorry?
Where did Woodlake feed you?
Woodlake Elementary
Okay.
feeds to Wagner. Yes, ma'am. Okay?
Because Woodlake was never ever in any of the criteria or scenario, and I still don't understand how Woodlake got there. When we have a school that's busting at the seams already, where those students going to feed into again?
That's what the demographer would have to then figure out once we do it. I'm sorry? Yes, ma'am. So either scenario that we look at, we're going to have busing for whatever scenario we look at. Okay? Understood. Understood.
Spring Meadows is that neighborhood elementary school, which is nice because unlike a lot of the other schools that you have to drive to, and you have to drive down the highway, it's right there. And you're talking about kids walking, that's a huge walker school also.
Right.
So has that been something you looked at?
That is something that.
None of the other schools, the closest other elementary school is Converse. From Spring Meadows?
From
Spring Meadows Elementary, the closest physical elementary school is Converse.
No, not from Spring Meadows. You got. Where's Dr. Sanders? You got Elof.
Beach Trail.
Stand up.
From Spring Meadows, and it takes you right to Elof.
Oh, okay.
Yes, right. If you have to cross the other DA, the Beach Trail is a road that goes
No.
straight from Spring Meadows, and it goes to Elof. It's the neighborhood across the street from where it's located. The other thing I think that Mr. Brooks, that we had to look at also was looking at the assessment that was done by RFK and
Corrigan.
Which were the 2 companies that we had come into the district to do an assessment of all our facilities and how much work needed to be done on each of those facilities. And then they brought that information back to us, and I know that as a growth and planning committee, you were looking at a lot of information. But what we had to do is not only talk to the growth and planning committee and get your input, we had to go back to facilities, we had to go to transportation, we had to go back to several other people that we had to consider all the different reports that we got in. And one of the things that came back to us when they sent the report to us, they had 3 levels. And those levels were priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. Priority 1 was in red, if you would remember how that sheet looked. That was work that needed to be on that campus, needs to be done on that campus immediately. Priority 2 was work that could be done in 3 to 5 years. And priority 3, 5 years or more, we could wait on fixing whatever it was on that campus. So when we sat down and took the campuses that y'all brought to us, and then we looked at the campuses that our directors of facilities and some of the other departments, what they brought to us, we had to consider, do we have $35 million lying around to fix everything that needed to be fixed on that campus, according to the assessment that we had done? And so one of the things we had to go back and look at, yes, this is what the Growth and Planning Committee brought to us, but we had to look again at where were each of those campuses in the light of those facilities assessments that were conducted on our elementary and middle school campuses. We also had to consider, when we were looking at all of these things, is that it is not our intention as a district to come in and to consolidate a campus and then allow that campus to be purchased by a private school or a charter school. We're looking at what commercial property do we have in Judson ISD right now. For instance, this building that you're sitting in right now is considered one of our commercial properties. Do we remove everything that's in this building and put it in one of our, what we're gonna call our reclassified or repurposed campuses that we are going to consolidate? And where is that in connection to where our internet docs are at and all of those things that we use to run the entire district? Because there are different buildings. For instance, if you go down the street over here, you have the ERC, the Educational Resource Building. You also have the admin building. So one of the things that we are looking at for the financial solvency plan is which of our buildings that we're utilizing right now that we can sell and go move that whole department or all those departments into a campus that we're going to consolidate and use the money from that sale to help address the deficit. So what we're trying to do as a whole is make sure that we're going through and looking at everything before we start talking about touching campuses with teachers and moving jobs and whatnot. Most of our teachers will probably have to move to wherever the kids are going to for the consolidations that we are considering. So I do not want y'all to feel like that the work that you did in growth and planning was not worth the time and effort that you put into it. I want you to know that that was taken into consideration, but we also had to run things through the demographers. We had to run things through the facilities assessment and all of those things, and then come back to the board with ideas about which campuses we could consider for consolidation going into next school year. I think you were first.
I was just wondering, is there a report that says like the amount of, like the percentage of transportation or like walkers are on each campus? Is there a report that says that?
Yeah. We know how many buses run for each campus. Where's Mrs. Stewart is right over there. I know how many buses run for each campus. I know how far different campuses are from each other, like the total time it takes to get from this campus to this campus, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, we have that information. But as far as the number of walkers, I'm sure we could probably ask the campus principals or someone to kind of figure out how many walkers that you have at your campus. But remember that when we first started as a rural district, most of our schools were built in communities because that was, at that time, in the 1950s and 60s, that's how schools were being built, not necessarily the way they were being built nowadays. It's the Copperfield is their highway, and those type of things. But it used to be you build a school where there was going to be a subdivision and you put the houses around the school. So there's a lot of our schools, Miller's Point is another one, that you do have a lot of walkers in it. And that is why we couldn't just say, let's look at walkers. We have to also consider the age of the building, the amount of work that needs to be done. There's other factors that we have to do. If we close the school down, if we consolidate the school, how many kids will we have to be busing? It would take them an hour to get to their school and an hour to get back to their neighborhood every day. Yes, ma'am.
When we're talking about transparency, I don't know about anybody else, but I feel like we've been getting this information in bits and pieces. The part that you just told to us, Mr. Brooks, about how we got to Kitty Hawk, J-STEM, like that wasn't information that was provided up front. And I think that's unfair that we've had to make recommendations based on information that we're getting piece by piece, and then schools coming up. I think the transparency has lacked. And therefore, I think that we would have maybe, well, I don't even have a complaint saying these were recommendations, because I have a problem with how the whole thing was done. But I think that it's like influencing certain things to be done for certain schools to be said. I know for our school, I'll say, they're building something because they put an $800 projector.
What's your school? Judson Middle School?
Judson Middle School.
Okay, I didn't know.
I'm sure you
Yeah.
did. But
I didn't know which one you were from.
But they, like I was saying, the school, I just feel like it's been pushed towards, and I'll say Judson, because we went from Kirby being up there, the next week we came, we got all this information on why we couldn't close Kirby and all the programs, and Kitty Hawk being J-STEM, but you're calling it J-STEM, but Kirby is also J-STEM, and these can be moved. And we were told, SOC, or their school of choices, so they shouldn't be in there, but you just explained, well, we did that to backfill, but that was at a deficit to Judson Middle School. So I'm just saying, like, this information, it just feels like you guys have already made your decision, and I just want this to be on the record, and we're just it's something to put on the committee as, oh, the committee recommended this, when that's not a truth. We have asked for meetings with just the committee members to come together and sit and talk, and we have not been given that. And I think that, like, a lot of decisions would have been different had we had the opportunities to talk to each other and have all of this information up front instead of in bits and pieces like we're getting now.
Comparing apples to oranges is
Right.
what you're saying.
Right.
We as a committee here, Growth and Planning Committee, we don't have the same information
Right.
that the demographers and everybody else have to make a decision, an informed decision on it. So now we're making decisions based off the information being provided to us, which isn't the same, and we can't make the same decision or a comparative decision to what the demographers and everyone else has.
Right, and I will tell you that the demographers' information that we're talking about tonight, did y'all see on these walls? We got that this morning.
That's sad.
And that is with us even asking for us to get it ahead of time, but we were still waiting for information this morning, because what the demographers are waiting on, they were waiting for us to give them the names of the schools, which we did not make a decision about until Monday when we met with the number of schools. So we had to know the number of schools, we still had to know the percentages for the utilization, we still had to know y'all had the copies of the priority assessments to go by and whatnot.
And the numbers were wrong on that, on the assessments, on some of the assessments, we challenged some of the numbers that were on there.
Number on the assessments.
On the first.
Miss, sorry.
I just have a clarifying question, but I just want to make sure that I'm listening and taking in the information, that I'm thinking about it based on what's intended for the outcome of the committee's today. So Is the committee making a recommendation? Like, are we selecting one option of each of these that will be recommended to the board? Or are all 5 of these gonna be submitted to the board along with our recommendation? Because I guess I'm wondering, are we making the decision of what's presented to the board? Or is it just our recommendation and all 5 will still be presented to the board?
All 5 are being presented to you.
Okay.
All 5 are being presented. What y'all are doing, we're presenting this to you, showing you what we have come up with as far as based on all of the data, the demographer, the maps, all of that to show you what all has been done, and then get your feedback on what all that is.
Okay, and so on Saturday, the board will discuss these
All of
5?
it.
Okay, but they won't make a decision?
Monday.
Okay.
Monday and
Tuesday.
Okay, so I guess my question a little bit kind of goes back to like the December and January meetings, when we were told like, these are the 4 criteria, 3 criteria, 4 criteria we're looking at. We looked at the quantitative data, and then the next meeting, we looked at all the qualitative data, and we came up with the recommendations. And I understand maybe some of them don't align with what the demographer says can happen and stuff, but if you look at our original recommendations, there is one that falls into every feeder pattern, which is now our new criteria that we're working under. So I guess it seems, why are we okay with only one option for Woodlake, which was not an identified school by us as the committee, but we're not okay with only one option being Ed Franz. So we just decided to pull a school that wasn't identified, and after we had all of our criteria that we were told was so important, and the second school didn't need it, did we just not like the recommendation? Or why did we need 2 options for that feeder, the veterans feeder pattern, but not the Wagner feeder pattern?
Wagner feeder pattern has 6 elementary schools.
Right.
Judson and Veterans has 7.
Okay.
And so
But we're growing up north too.
I get it, but when we're looking at what we're doing right now, as far as the number of elementary schools in each feeder pattern, to pull, like I said, we considered the 2 schools in Wagner, Candlewood and Woodlake, but we couldn't, the other schools that are in that feeder pattern, Masters, what's the other?
But I think more so than that is, why are we not okay with Ed Franz, which was identified? Why are we not okay with that being our only option for veterans? Why did we have to search for a second option for that, which wasn't an identified school based on the criteria you gave us? Not you, but we were given.
Again, we were trying to have 2 options per feeder pattern. That's why we have 2 in Veterans, 2 in Judson. We wanted the 2 in Wagner, but then, like I said, the Candlewood one wasn't working. And then when we talk about, I was reminded basically that we have only 6 in Wagner. So we're trying to be as equitable as possible. So it's not that we're okay with it. I understand what you're saying.
I don't think it feels equitable, right? Because we have the criteria, one met the criteria, one didn't. So it doesn't feel equitable. It feels like we're trying to make it be equitable and looking at it with that lens, but it's actually not, because we're trying to make the piece fit that doesn't quite fit. Right, I mean, yeah.
Well, I mean,
So,
I hear what you're saying, but
I mean, it just feels like, why are we trying to do that if we have one that met the criteria that we were told was really important? These were the things to consider, and we considered those things. And then it fits with the new criteria also.
well,
Why not do what fit the criteria?
Can I try?
Go ahead.
Before you get started. Okay. So when we first started this, and he keeps going, Mr. Brooks keeps going back to it, and talks about that we had 2. It was Woodlake and it was Candlewood, right? So when we tried to remove Candlewood, we had to remove Candlewood because we could not put the kids on a bus, or we could not fit them into Masters because it's at capacity. Escondido is a problem because we have a lot of students in the district that are over there for school of choice, so the numbers are high there. We also looked at Hopkins, Because if we were gonna remove Candlewood, could we put Hopkins in that spot? But the problem where Hopkins is located over there by Ackerman Road, there is no other elementary in that vicinity right there. So that took Hopkins off the table also. And then Masters is off the table, Hopkins is off the table, Pashaw was another one, but Pashaw was already at, I don't know where the principal is, but Pashaw was already at, almost at capacity at Pashaw, so how many kids could we truly fit from the campus that we were trying to move from, and you could probably help out more because that's your world. The campus that we were trying to, how many kids could we actually, elementary more kids, or now we're gonna split elementary kids between 3 campuses. Does that make sense? Because you only put 25 here, maybe 30 over here, maybe 20. And so now we're talking about busing kids completely out of their neighborhood into a totally different neighborhood in order for them to be taken care of on what we call the area of the district where they were at. And so it wasn't like we sat there and said, okay, so we're just going to only pick Woodlake. We tried several different scenarios to put another school out of that feeder pattern to make sure that we were going to be equitable across the session. You would have 2, so the board could have 2, 2, and 2 to look at. It just does not work that way because of the sheer distance that our schools that are on the south end of our district, how far they would have to go in order to come to the center of our district. Because just coming from the Wagner area is like another 25 to 30 minutes just to get in your car to get there. So a bus is going to be even more. So you're talking about now an hour to get from point A to point B. And that was one of the things that was really the pushing factor for us to do Cibolo Creek, to build it, because everybody keeps talking about why are we building schools when we are closing school. Well, that was the whole point about Cibolo Creek and Selma, because we know the growth was in that area. We did not have a middle school in that area, and so the kids that were living in that area were riding buses to Kitty Hawk, and were on the bus for an hour back and forth, my child included. And so that was the whole point of building the elementary and the middle school in the area that we were seeing explosive growth. But now that we're at this point in time, we're talking about where are we now in our district. We know the enrollment is dropping. We have got to make decisions about where we can move or consolidate schools in order to ensure that we're using our facilities to the maximum capacity.
Mr. Michael.
Yes.
What I'm understanding right now is there's a lot going on, a lot of decisions need to be made. Have we explored redrawing all district lines? Is that a possibility? You remove Woodlake, can you redraw district lines for all the schools around it to feed the different elementary schools and make sure that they're at capacities? And then that redraw district lines for all of the middle schools and all of the high schools. And now we're looking at not limiting ourselves to certain locations or removing certain schools, because now current district lines only say that we can move 400 kids to these 2 schools and they're already at capacity. So has that been explored at all?
That was the entire rationale behind us saying 4 schools instead of 2, because we're going to have to touch boundaries everywhere. It just makes sense to do it. If you're going to do boundaries, and we're talking about 4 schools, it might as well look at every boundary, because there are places in our district that you have a street, one side of the street goes to a different campus, and you cross the street and you'll be in a different school. You see what I'm saying? And you're on the same street. You have the same street address, like Candlelight. I don't even know, I'm just making up one. But Candlelight is the name of the street. But this side of Candlelight goes to this school, and this side of Candlelight goes to that school. So we have talked with the demographer that we're going to touch boundaries. Let's make sure we try to fix as much as we can so we can be equitable and equal around the district.
What? I'm sorry, but just to kind of piggyback on what he just asked. The boundaries, although we're touching boundaries across the district, what you just asked as far as redrawing all of the boundaries for the entire district, no, we didn't do that. What we did was look at, okay, the schools, based on the criteria, the schools that we're recommending to be
Which criteria?
consolidated.
Because there's a lot of criteria. We didn't
Well-
have one criteria, demographers, different criteria, so.
It's
we can be clear.
all of it is together. Okay, the criteria you guys looked at, the criteria as far as what the demographer came up with, as far as what we recommended to them from here. Hey, here's what we're thinking we need to do as far as closures of schools. How can you make this happen for us? They go and they start doing their work and trying to make those schools fit what we're saying needs to be done. And they come back to us and say, okay, we can do this one, we can do this one, we're not gonna be able to get it done because of whatever factors that we just talked about as far as enrollment or whatever the case. So it's not that we got this set of criteria out here that we don't want you guys to know. It's just additional information that we then have to incorporate once they start doing the work of consolidating those campuses. So I understand what y'all are saying in the sense that we're using a bunch of different types of criteria. To me, it's all added together to come up with one particular decision based on all of the stuff that we've looked at. So that's the best I can explain it to you. So it's not like we just got this other set of criteria out here that you guys don't know about.
So, I feel like that's what it is.
Well, I mean, you can
Right?
feel that way, but that's not what we're doing, I guess is what I'm saying.
So, and you may not feel that way because you're the focal point, right? You guys are the center of it all.
Understood.
We're out here on the outside and we only get partial information and then we get more information, bits and pieces at a time after decisions are made from us and or.
Well, like she said, I wouldn't know that once we give the demographer our recommendation that something is not gonna work, and so now they're coming back to us saying, hey, there's something else you need to consider. So as we get that new information, we're coming back to you guys. We meet once a month here, but we're getting stuff from them throughout the week as we're going through this process. So I understand what you're saying, and that we're getting information that you guys aren't getting because we're not coming back to you as we're getting it. So,
Well, that and a lot of the committee has asked for some of the information that then later comes, right? We had, why are we making this decision without certain information? And then it's not until later, oh, let's add this, let's add that. So that's where some of the confusion comes in.
understood. Yes, ma'am.
I just have a question regarding, did you say that Escondido was high because of their school of choice? Yeah. Okay, so is school of choice gonna be something that continues?
We are. Oh, I'm sorry. That is something that we have been discussing because we went into the school of choice and we pretty much like, where your child wants to go, they can go and whatnot. And what we have found is that in reality, some of the areas that we were talking that it was okay to do that, it used to be farmland in that area and now there's houses. And so we are going to have to look at school of choice. We're also going to have to look at out of district because the last thing you want is people moving into a neighborhood thinking that their neighborhood school is right up the street and then they're finding out, no, you can't go there because the school is overcrowded because of school of choice or for out of district. So I know that we're looking at how we are going to reconfigure that for next year to kind of make sure that if you are living or moving into a certain area, that your child is not having to be bused to a whole nother part of the district because that area, you have so many school choice kids that were there. Because what really happened in Escondido and Copperfield is that we had a lot of East Central babies in our schools because East Central did not have elementary schools that were near the subdivisions that were designated for their children. And so instead of them driving 20 and 30 minutes to take their kids to a school in East Central where they were supposed to be going, they were enrolling the kids into our district at our campuses that were nearby the neighborhoods that were zoned for East Central.
Right. Would that then change if you decided not to?
School of choice are kids that live within our district that want to go to school at a different school other than their home school. Out of district is what we're really looking at, and we're really already, we're really trying to try to tamper down on out of district. But yes, it will change. It would have to change because of what the campus is capped, for lack of a better word. That third grade or that fourth grade cap, you can't take kids from school of choice. You have to allow the kids that live in the neighborhood to live there. So there's some things that have to be that. I'm trying to because I know it's your area of expertise.
I want to say one thing about school of choice so that everybody hears it. Sure. So when it comes to changing boundary lines, you may remember that we've done this before, and you may not if it didn't affect you. But when we change boundary lines, the way that students register in Judson has to do with their address. So when we change boundary lines, any students, let's say they're a school of choice student at Olympia, they would be automatically redistricted back to their home campus. Okay? So once that happens, then everybody at the onset of the boundary lines, we know what school they all belong to. And then we can see how many students belong to that campus. It is at that point that we would then evaluate the school of choice piece. So that may mean that, Copperfield may have had a bunch of students that were school of choice. If that boundary changes at all for that campus, those students go back to their home campus, then we would be able to see who from wherever else it came from filled in for those spots to determine is there space or is there not space for those school of choice students. So there's lots of moving parts there with that in terms of redistricting and resetting those boundary lines and school of choice. So it will alter what school of choice looks like, and the district is going to have to make some of those decisions on do we continue with school of choice the way that we have based on our new school utilizations and where students go to school, or do we continue with the practice or maybe limit? Because there are certain campuses we currently have now that we really can't take additional school of choice students because they're already at capacity. And that's before we change the guidelines.
Thank you. First, I just want to say thank you for having the demography maps for us to look at and view. I appreciate that. I also remember from some of our earlier meetings back in the fall, you, as you shared information with the committee when we made decisions, you focused on it being quantitative data that we were looking at first. You told us that there would be qualitative data that would come into play later, and that our recommendation may or may not be accepted by the board, and that they may have other factors and other data that they consider. And so I'm not surprised that there's maybe some differences from what the committee originally looked at, because we were only provided like a small sliver of data to review. And so I'm curious if the board is going to receive additional qualitative data, such as like performance measures, star scores, things like I'm the Franz representative, and I spoke about this previously. Franz is a B-rated school. It has several distinctions. It outperformed every elementary campus, or not every elementary campus, every district average for every subject in their school. They have double-digit gains in mathematics, so I know they are doing some great things there. So will that, as well as for the other schools that are listed here, will those types of data pieces be shared with the board on Saturday?
You want to defer to Ms. Dr. Duhart-Toppin on that?
Yes. Yes, they will be. I do want to reiterate, and I know I'm sorry. I got it. Thank you. Yes, they will get performance data on Saturday. I did not include that in the upload that we did because honestly and truly, TA does not want you to use that as a measure to determine whether or not a school can get consolidated or not. You're not supposed to use it. And you're not supposed to use it because they don't want a whole school being shoved into another school or being consolidated with another school, and that be the deciding factor of why it's going that way. So they will get the data at the meeting on Saturday. If you're at the meeting on Saturday, I love day. If you're at that meeting, you will definitely be able to hear it. It is Valentine's Day. You will be able to hear the conversation about that because we do take that into consideration, but it cannot be a deciding factor. They keep reminding me of that from TDA. Cannot be a deciding factor of why a campus will or will not be consolidated. Okay?
Hey, Dr. Kosh, going back to DOI, when we refound and we set those pieces, parents will then, because everybody will be zoned, not DOI, I'm sorry, school of choice. When they go back and they're put back into their boundaries, parents would then have to reapply for school of choice again.
So when we changed boundaries last time, that is exactly what happened. All the students that were at a school of choice that had a boundary change, that went back to their home campus, and then they reapplied to then go back to the campus that they had been back before. This is a much larger change, and so I don't want to tell anybody in this room that if you're at a school of choice right now, we close the campus, you go back to your zone area, that you would be able to go directly back to that campus, because that is going to determine, that is going to be based on capacity and space. So if you have a campus that has a large number of school of choice students, and you have 200 school of choice students, some of the students may be able to return there based on numbers and the redistricting, but some might not be able to. So when we say we'll have to evaluate and look at how we go through that process, whether that is application, first come, first serve, all those are all decisions that have to be made later. So those are secondary decisions that come after that point. So obviously we want to provide to the district everything that we can in terms of school of choice and the programs we currently have. They just may look a little different, and we may manage them a little bit.
But it won't be just assumed that if
It
they're
was
going
never
there now.
assumed, it was never assumed before, it was still an application, and the principal from that campus still had the ability to say whether or not they were going to allow that transfer or not. So everybody has the opportunity to apply back to their old campus, but it did not necessarily mean that they were given the opportunity to move based on our criteria for school of choice, which is attendance, grades, discipline, and overcrowding is the last piece of why you would be not denied a school of choice placement.
And I'm just going to ask, just to clarify, or reiterate, the deciding factors, what are the actual deciding factors we should look at?
So it was enrollment, campus utilization, it was the facilities assessment, how much is it going to cost to bring campuses up to par as far as renovations or what needs to be fixed on the campus. There was cost per student as far as utilities are concerned, and that kind of ties into the enrollment. Whatever it costs to, as far as utilities, based on the number of students in that building, and you can figure out how much cost per student is for utilities. And then all of these ancillary things, as far as we're working with Mr. Stewart to see what transportation would look like. Any campus we consolidate, we're more than likely going to have to add bus routes, which means we're going to have to add buses or bus drivers. Those are all things that are kind of they're tangible in that once we know how many, we'll then be able to figure out how much that costs. But right now, until we actually know the schools, we don't know how many routes additional routes we're going to have to start running, how many additional buses we're going to have to start running. So those are things that we just don't have right now, because we'll find those out once we do make the decision as to which schools get closed, or I keep saying closed, consolidated. Then Mr. Stewart and his team will then start routing and all of that. Then we'll know. So so as far as like a hard and fast, these are the criteria. The ones that I gave when we used that first meeting, those are kind of the hard, fast numbers. But then we have intangible things that we have to look at as well. She spoke about the qualitative stuff, programs that are at a campus. Did you talk about bilingual and whether or not we would have to move bilingual programs, that type of thing. So it's all of that. Yes, sir.
I was I was here for the meetings and when we first did this and we used all these numbers and stuff that you gave us, we came up with a list of schools. And we had 6 schools and we selected 4. And then of those schools, the only, I think all the feeder patterns except for Wagner were covered. We had 2 from Wagner, for veterans, we had 2 for Judson, and now Kettlewell was the only one for Wagner. And you replace that with Woodlake, but why did we get rid of other schools and then add schools? I'll just, as an example, Rolling Meadows. Rolling Meadows was on the original list, and now it's off. But it met the criteria that you're talking about. But now it doesn't, and you found another school that you want to put in its place.
So when we talk about the campus indexes, as far as the amount of money that it would cost to fix a building or whatever, the school that we replaced Rolling Meadows with was higher on the list than Rolling Meadows was, as far as the repairs for all 3 priorities, priority 1, 2, and 3. So we had to look at that as well. So if all things being equal, as far as enrollment, if they were similar in enrollment, similar in distance apart and whatnot, then we have to look at, okay, well, how much money are we going to spend to bring this school up to par as opposed to this school?
That wasn't considered when we put the school on the list.
I'm sorry?
When we originally put the school on the list, that wasn't part of the criteria.
The school index was already, yeah.
Well, it wouldn't have made the list then why did it make the list? Why, what I'm saying is, why did Rolling Meadows make the list and then Olympia didn't? But now Olympia makes the list and Rolling Meadows doesn't. I think, based on the same criteria that we've been talking about.
I think Rolling Meadows had something that had to do with enrollment, with the utilization rate. I think that may have been one of the.
Well, then we weren't given the right information.
No, it was on it.
Okay, well then, again, then, why is it on the list or not on the list and Olympia? Rolling Meadows.
Because it didn't.
My point is it made the list, but now we took it off the list and we took another school and we put it in its place. And it wouldn't have changed anything.
So when we started talking, where Rolling Meadows came in, it wanted to 5% on the assessment index. So 5% means that it's probably one of the schools that needs fewer repairs done to it because it's a newer school. 1. 2, the other thing is that Rolling Meadows, we know we messed with Rolling Meadows enrollment when we opened up Selma. And then we had a piece in Rolling Meadows that we wanted to try to keep over there, and then we ended up moving it, I think, to Selma or something like that. And so Rolling Meadows can hold a lot more kids than what we have in there right now. And so when you're looking at things and we're talking about, okay, we're looking at maybe consolidating friends, where are those kids going to go? We're going to consolidate. Point was one that y'all had on the list also, where are those kids going to go? And so we have to look at as a district, we have to look at where do we have room to move kids that is not going to push our kids into a long commute to school and back. And so with Rolling Meadows, it was looking at the assessment, the condition of the campus in comparison to the condition of the other campus that we were comparing it to. And then how much was it going to cost in order for us to fix those repairs that the assessment person, people, Corrigan and RFK, how much they assessed. RBK, thank you. Keep my letters straight. How much it was going to cost in order to get that campus to where we were like, we could use them in prime condition.
My point though is that it was on the list, and then it came off the list, another one went in place.
Yes, you talked about Rolling Meadows and
I'm just using that as
France.
an example.
Uh-huh.
All right, so the thing is that this is where it gets down to, we weren't given the information, and this, when it made the list the first time, right, it was never changed or never looked at up until now. And now we've taken it off and we put another one on. That's a
And that's the groups list. We also look at this, what y'all are looking at. We also look at what we're looking at. We're talking to the different department chairs, department heads of these different departments, and talking to people like Polly Ann and like, okay, what about facilities? What are we talking about here and all of that? But we have to keep going back to the assessments because we pay people to come in and tell us what
Did
we're
they do
doing.
another assessment after that?
No, I've been looking at the same assessment sheet
Well,
there
I
at
just
the
looked at
beginning.
what we picked back in, on the first vote. And now and then we had a second vote.
Yeah.
And now we're looking at another vote, and gosh, we're changing the schools, and we took one off and put one in.
I can tell you this, when you get a group of people trying to agree on one thing, what I have learned is that it can change again on Saturday. Because when they're looking at the data and they're going through and whatnot, what we're talking about is that things happen that bring different aspects into the piece. We talked about qualitative data versus quantitative data. There's different programs and all of those things that you have to consider. What we are doing and what y'all have done is made recommendations. And here's the data that backs up those recommendations.
I know, but it looks like we make these recommendations, and it doesn't matter what we say, you guys are changing it. That's what it looks like.
That's what it feels like.
Just so you know.
Yeah, I know. Because as a community, we have to get everybody's feedback. Correct.
And nobody said it can change Saturday, nobody should.
Sarah.
It's all good. It's okay, I'll go straight.
Go ahead, sir.
Do I need a mic?
Yes.
Okay, do I need to vote? It's on? Okay. As long as it's on.
It's No, you can't, we're recording.
I can't hear you online anyway.
So I know that at the risk of sounding like I'm repeating myself, we were here a few meetings ago and I talked to Dr. Fields and said, this is a really complex, how do you ever expect the community to do this? We've got Zonda and is it RFK? There's a couple of the ones that did the RFK and Corrigan that we've seen things from over the years, and I know it's a really difficult overlay of all these factors. And if we're looking now at Olympia as well, are we going to go through these, Dan? And I guess my question is more like, what's the direction of the community? Are we going to go through elementary plan 4, 5, and 6 and talk about like pros and cons of each one? And is this committee going to be voting on those? And the middle school plans
You're
tonight?
not voting on anything.
So we're just talking tonight?
Talking tonight, looking at all these.
Okay.
And I was gonna give folks opportunity to look at the map.
Yeah.
Give us feedback on the maps as far as the boundaries, all of that. But at the end of the day, the board is going to make a decision.
Okay.
What
And I, just a note on Olympia, we just last year sat through the meetings where we went to close Coronado. And I feel like that's super close to the Olympia community, that Universal City community. And I think that to close 2 schools in one community over the course of 3 years would be a really, really difficult thing to do to that community. And I think that we didn't have Olympia on this list, and it didn't rise to the top in terms of what the criteria that we were looking at, which, as you said and mentioned, and I agree, has changed and changed and changed, and we've been getting different information from here, and oh wait, now we gotta think about the utility cost per kid, and now we gotta think about the bus line, and that's why when we started this, I was like, there's a lot of stuff we have to put together. If they're doing something new at Judson Middle School, what are they doing? Are we spending money there?
Yes,
How many
we
kids?
are.
And I mean, just to the point of Judson Middle, that campus can hold how many people? Maybe we need to take Katie Hawk over there. Who knows, There's some other things that we could be doing, but in terms of just speaking up on behalf of Olympia, we didn't look a whole lot at Olympia because it didn't rise to the top. So when we were looking at all of those other factors, I don't think we looked at that. And just to speak up for Olympia, that's in the heart of Universal City. That's a very tight-knit community. And I would be really reticent to ever choose an option here that included Olympia. So anyway, I'm not going to say. There you go.
So I'll say this, and listen, as I started this meeting, I said this is a difficult thing to do. The argument you just made, Judson Middle School can make the same argument. Woodlake Elementary can make the same argument. Bronze can make the same argument. Guys, this isn't easy. I get it. I understand. But at the end of the day, the district is in a deficit, and we have to make a decision on how we're going to move forward as far as making sure we have the resources we need to educate our kids. Everything everyone is saying is valid. We're trying to do the best we can to come up with the best decision possible. Yes, we got a couple of schools that this committee had not looked at. I get it. But at the end of the day, we have to look at the totality of this process and make a decision and give that recommendation to the board. And that's what we're trying to do here and then.
Thank you. So we have a list of the examples, right? We close, example A, example B, and the demographer changed the lines, and, we have walkers and we have this. Do we have numbers of, since we have other numbers, obviously, right? Do we have numbers of what transportation would cost if we did each one of those examples? Because that's going to play a big factor in some of these school closures. I mean, some of our schools only have 2 buses because we're in the middle of the neighborhood, right? So if you close one of those schools and you're adding that transportation cost, it doesn't make sense. So when we have examples for each one of those clusters of schools that we're looking at consolidating, do we have the transportation numbers of what that's going to cost for that cluster?
I think we have a couple, but not all. But Mr. Stewart will be able to give us numbers on that, but we don't have all of them. I don't think we have all of them right now, do we, Mr. Stewart? And this, I keep saying Mr. Stewart, he's the director of transportation.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm going to stand up because I'm Tom Maxwell. I'm the mayor of Universal City. Thank you. I'm not here for a political assessment. I'm here as a public servant. I personally did not have any children in the Judson School District, though my daughter did graduate there many years ago. I live in Church City below Universal City District, but I serve Universal City, which has 2 school districts and 2 counties. I appreciate what you have done. I was on a closure team for a large military base a number of years ago, and I spent 15 months there basically terminating people and closing buildings down, taking them, and allowing them out. It's not a fun job. Closing a building and consolidating is similar to that, and you're affecting people's lives. I want people to realize that I appreciate all the hard work that's gone in. The people that are on the growth and planning committee that are here tonight, I appreciate you taking your time and asking the questions and actually taking the time to be here tonight, because this is important. And I'm sorry to see so many green tags out there that have seats around them. It needs to be pointed out. This is a serious matter. And if you got a committee, I think the whole committee should be here. Whatever action you take, I'm talking to Universal City, but if I were the mayor of Kirby, I'd be saying the same thing. Whatever action you take, there are expected consequences. Your expected consequences is that you're going to save money here. What I am hearing tonight is we haven't taken in consideration the unexpected consequences. You expect an increase in bus fares. What I'm feeling is one of the unexpected consequences is a lack of trust in the school district. Because this is not something to withdraw and to be appalled about. This is a fact that we need to address. You talk about open transparency and things of that nature. 8 different categories that we're trying to combine together, and every time you come up with the answer of one, it changes the answer of the other side. That is not the way. And I'm going to ask one question. When did the decision to consolidate schools by the board, when was that decision made that we were going to do that? A week ago, 2 weeks ago? I know the second coming's coming somewhere, but I start planning for it before. But I don't think we have identified a plan. I'm gonna challenge the board to actually do a study, a long-term study. I don't know what a long-term study is. That may be 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 6 months. I honestly don't think we have sufficient time to make, for the board to make a really good judgment on which schools need to be consolidated and where they need to go. I know that you have $30 plus million you need to make up. But some of that unexpected consequences, by making these changes, you may find that you haven't saved anything. You just lose money from this pile over to this pile, and you still got a very large deficit that you have to go. I'm not here to answer questions because I don't have any answers for you. I'm just here making an observation. As a businessman and a person who has closed a large facility, a large operating base, which is a large city, and watching thousands of people finding new jobs. Most of them found new jobs. I mean, we transport, but it's still a very hard job to go. And with that being said, I appreciate, again, all the hard work you are doing to make this happen. But I think I urge you to get all of the information and consolidate it so we are all working off the same page.
Somebody, sorry, is this on? No. Do I need to hit the button like that? There we go. I'm asking this on behalf of somebody else who isn't comfortable talking. One is why Woodlake? And I was curious, so I went back to the original results in our email, and I did see Woodlake in our voting results. I saw Park Village. Huh? It wasn't in there. Okay. I went back and looked, and I don't see it there. So the question from somebody else that I'm speaking is, why Woodlake? It has 583 students. Why force one elementary to the Wagner feeder when all of the surrounding schools have almost 700 students? A follow-up would be, how would you distribute the Woodlake students to other schools that will accommodate them? And did the demographer, were they forced to choose a Wagner feeder school instead of looking at the possibility of other schools that might better fit the criteria of budget concerns that we've had? That we had chosen based on the whole point of being here is we're trying to, I guess, save money in the district because we're in such a deficit. So was that overlooked in order to pick one that was in the Wagner feeder? So that's somebody else's question.
No, we did not overlook anything. We did not force the demographer to use Woodlake Elementary. As they, again, and I talked about this, as they looked at trying to fit Candlewood as far as consolidating Candlewood and redistributing those students. When they could not do that, we wanted to make sure that we tried to stay within the 3 feeder patterns because it affects the high school as far as how many students then go to the high school. So again, the feedback we got from our principals as well was that, the fairest thing to do would be to try and choose one from each feeder pattern so that all schools would, as much as possible have equity or whatever you want to call it. And so that's why we chose, and the fact that when you look at Masters, when you look at Escondido, as possible schools in that feeder pattern, and for Shaw, Woodlake was the one outside of Candlewood that rose to the top if you weren't going to use Candlewood. So that's how we got to Woodlake Elementary.
And Candlewood was eliminated strictly based on walkers. Sorry.
They could, correct, because that's a whole, that whole
don't have any buses.
district, there's no buses. We would have to bring in buses for that whole school and redistribute. But not just that. Also, the surrounding schools, and this kind of goes to what Mr. Michael was saying. I can't say his name. I'm sorry. the rezoning of the entire district to try and make that happen. We have not done that. We're doing the zoning based on the possibility of particular schools being consolidated.
Well, it looks like Woodlake is on every option, so do you know where those students would go?
The demographer will be able to then redistribute those students to probably ELOF. We're looking at, what was the other one? Pashal.
And in that area, Shaw.
Canby Masters. It's ELOF, it's Pashal.
You all just mentioned that that's what Canada was going to have a hard time with consolidation. You said Masters, Pashal, Hopkins, and you guys mentioned Escondido as being too full. At the beginning of the meeting, we had mentioned Candlewood, and that was going to be hard to consolidate. So the schools that you mentioned that they would go to, they're already too full.
Which
Escondido was mentioned, not with you, but when you said it, but to consolidate Candlewood, it would be Masters. Pashal and Hopkins would be too full, so that's why Candlewood wasn't put on
that along with
consolidation.
transportation, yes.
No, so that probably wouldn't be a good idea to do if the schools you mentioned, they would be transferred to our elementary schools you had told us that would be full previously.
So right now, when you're talking about Woodlake, we're looking at ELOF and Pashal. Or Woodlake.
Pashal, you guys mentioned that would be too full for Candlewood. Is it the same enrollment?
We're not talking about all the kids going to Pashal. We're talking about a portion of the kids, going to Pashal. From Woodlake.
Okay. A community member wanted me to address this and say this is equity versus quality issue. The north and south side are being treated equally, not equitably. Equitable means same class sizes for teachers and similar enrollment sizes. It is not about cutting one per feeder pattern. 2 schools based on growth and planning committee vote, Bronx and Park Village are top 2. South side is absorbing Park Village. The south side carries the majority of enrollment for Judson, and yet you want to close a Wagner feeder to increase already large class size in comparison to the north. This is not equal. This is not equity. This is trying to be equal. 2 schools on the north side need to be considered for consolidation because the north side has low enrollment and the space to absorb. This is not about equality. It's about equity. I was a community member.
Give you my email and you can send that to me.
I will.
Thank you.
Also, one other quick community question was, what happened to Miller's Point on the list? Miller's Point was on the list, where did that go?
When we started looking at, you want to talk about it? When we started looking at Ed Franz, and we started looking at not Rolling Meadows, Ed Franz and Olympia, and only going to pitching it to Saunders because that's our world. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
So great idea. How about we don't close schools and we pass it later in November? So that's the reality of this conversation, right? I also want to acknowledge for the space. Thank you guys for all of the feedback. None of this is easy. If there were a conversation and we had to do this all over again, we would have had a conversation with the board earlier about let's decide the number of schools back in October. Then we could have brought the demographer here. We could have looked at all of those pieces at the same time. To Mr. Patch's point, then we would have had all the data in front of us and we could have talked about that as an entire group. We did not do that. Here's where we are now. So I think our best charge moving forward is we take the data we have and we see if it's somehow in our mind we can rationalize the idea about closing these schools. Here's the reality. I just told Sarah this. I taught 7 years at Olympia. No, I don't want to see it closed. My son learned to ride a bike on the blacktop.
I spent 4 years at Park Village. I earned my master's and my PhD while there. I do not want to see Park Village close. I was the principal at Woodlake for 5 years. I do not want to see Woodlake close. This is hard. This is the space we're in. We can talk about every single scenario, and it is going to impact every single community we talk about. There is no right answer. The only thing we're asking you guys is to please be patient with us. Because guess what? This is the first time we've had to close 4 schools in the history of Judson ISD. The first time. And you're right. We made lots of mistakes. There was lots of opportunities where we could have done this differently. We should look at the manual where we closed 4 schools in the past. There isn't one. To use Dr. Field's language, we are literally flying the plane as we are building it. And we appreciate all the feedback that you guys have given us. Hopefully we don't ever have to go through this process in the future. We're just trying to do what we feel is best. And just like information is coming at you every 24 hours, information is coming to us every 24 hours. From demographers, from community members, from TEA, from the school board, from now our 3rd person sitting in the chair. We're not trying to get any of this wrong, I promise you. 29 years in Judson. I want to leave this place better than when I got here. No one's trying to get this wrong. We don't have the answer to every single scenario. We're doing the best we can to try to figure out what it looks like now. And to go back to what Dr. Duhart-Toppin said yesterday, or earlier, an hour ago, yesterday, a year ago, we are going to try to provide a recommendation to the board so that they can make an educated vote. Is someone going to be upset regardless of what we do? Absolutely. Welcome to community feedback. Because the opposite of this looks like we skip this process, we take our recommendations straight to the school board, and then we just come back and say, and your campus is closing, and your campus is closing, and your campus is closing. I'm not trying to do that. We're trying to get this right. Are we fumbling? Yes. And we apologize. But we're also asking for grace. I don't have the answer to the Miller's Point question. I can make something up if you guys want me to, but I don't have the answer. We don't know how everything is going to roll out. We're trying to shake the magic 8 ball and see if we can figure out what this is going to look like. But you guys are asking us questions, which we greatly appreciate, that honestly, we haven't even forecasted. And why haven't we forecasted? Because we don't live in the Miller's Point attendance zone. Or because we don't live in the Olympia attendance zone. We're trying to make these decisions based on data. The most important piece of data we have right now is your feedback. And we appreciate it. And I want to remind you, we're not trying to get anything wrong.
Hello. Sorry. Me again. I don't think anybody here, we're all opposed to closing, consolidating schools, but we're all in support of supporting the board of the district and their decision. We just want to make sure that we are also providing the appropriate feedback to you guys to make an informed decision here. And you mentioned just a moment ago, data, information. It's coming to you guys at a cycle rate, right? And it's coming to us at a cycle rate. Is there any point in time where we're going to get the demographers' information presented to us so that we can make an informed decision on what they present to you guys so that we can see the data and help make an informed decision?
We tried to get them here tonight, they could not make it.
So
we wanted them here tonight.
His information is only verbal. He didn't provide it to you guys via
Video,
PowerPoint or anything else.
what you see is on the wall right here is what they provided to us.
Yeah, the demographers, just so we're clear, the demographers' information is the maps, the reports that we have as far as what attendance would look like if this school is closed. This is what this school would look like as far as enrollment, number of students in the class, all of that kind of stuff in the building. But then these are the maps that they produced for us. So this is the demographer's information that they provided to us. They could have come here and explained the map as far as, but what I can tell you is the colored sections are what the projected boundaries would look like. The red lines are what the current boundaries are. So you can kind of see, based on where students are now, where they would be projected to go if those schools were to be consolidated. So there is no other presentation for the demographer to make other than what we have here for you. All right?
I wanted to first thank you for, I wanted to thank you first for mentioning that it was a great idea to keep Rolling Meadows where you could move kids in since there were kids taken from somewhere. I appreciate you acknowledging that. Thank you. Because the year was given to us on the report and everything. But I did, on one of the past meetings, it was said that the priorities 1, 2, and 3, that even though we would be closing some of those schools, that those repairs would still need to be done. And in order to help rectify the budget, would we be delaying some of those repairs in order to rectify the budget before that? That's my main question is, if we're closing those schools, and I understand we would be selling something like this building. However, if we're still needing to make those repairs, where is that going to be offset?
So let me explain the stuff that's going on at the different campuses. If you drive the district, there is construction going on at almost every campus. Bonds were passed. 2016 bond, 2017 was just veterans, but 2022 bond. Those projects, there you go. Those projects that were identified in those bonds, that money has to be spent on those projects. We recognize that there are certain schools that we're looking to consolidate. Depending on what the project for that campus is, we're deciding whether we need to delay that project or let that project continue. Roofing, regardless of what we're going to use the school building for, the campus building, the roofing still needs to be done. So whether we consolidate it or not, the roofing is going to continue. Vestibules that we currently are doing at some of the campus, those are going to continue. Gym flooring may not necessarily be something that we do, so we're delaying certain projects that has to do with gym flooring, depending on whether or not we're going to consolidate a campus. If we decide that we are going to consolidate a campus that had gym flooring as a project, then we'll have to come back and look at it and say, okay, do we want to spend that money knowing that we're getting ready to consolidate this campus? So we are looking at that with our facilities planning team to make sure that we're not spending money on something unnecessarily if we know we could possibly consolidate that campus. Okay? All right. She was actually next. She's trying to beat me up. So.
I don't know who spoke earlier. I work with the district. I just wanted to say thank you for your service to the district and for your passion that you shared with all of us. I do want to respond to some of the things that you said.
Yes, ma'am.
So I work at TEA, and so I know across the state that not a lot of community members get an opportunity to do something. Like, sometimes those decisions are made and you find out, oh, this is what's happened. And so I really appreciate that we got to be in this space, even though it's been uncomfortable. And I've been pretty vocal because, I mean, I'm a committee member for Friends, and I was asked by a teacher, please save our school. And so I felt the weight of the entire Friends community on my shoulders. And so I spoke passionately at every meeting. And I think at this point I realized, like, it's now in the hands of our board, of our elected officials to make these decisions. But one thing I want to say is, as a community member, someone who's living through, like, having my school be named every time, it's not good to hear we're building the plane as we fly. Like, no community member wants to hear that. We want to have trust in the leadership of our district. The other thing that I ask is that this is very hard, and whatever decisions the board makes, the communities that are affected, like, we need care. So my granddaughters went and visited their new middle school last week. That probably should have been postponed if theater patterns are shifting. You know, because that'll traumatize a fifth grader. You know, going to sixth grade is already hard enough, right? And so think about those things. I know there are families and friends that still don't even know that their school's up for consideration, right? And so when news of this comes out next week, it's going to be hard. Communities are going to feel, the faculty will feel destroyed. Communities will feel destroyed. I live across the street from France. I'm thinking, what's going to happen to my property values, right? Like this is going to impact not just France, every school that's selected. There needs to be community meetings, healing, like support, and I really hope the district thinks through that very carefully because we're not in a good place as a district. This is an opportunity, to go a new road and to really care for the people that are going to be affected by this.
Thank you for that. Totally believe that I've already talked to our lead of our counseling department. I need a list of dates because we're going to have to redo the transition meetings that we had for 5th going to 6th, from 8th going to 9th grade. We're going to have to do the tours. We're going to have to do all of that. So we're working on that even as, and I also firmly believe that whatever community is going to be impacted, we got to have a community forum and meet people face to face and have that conversation with them after the decision is made, because it's going to be important to listen about what is going to be needed. And so all of that is being worked on right now. We just need a decision to be made, but I voted.
All right, last one, Ms. Lerman.
Thank you. So for decisions to be made, right, there was a lot of great questions that were asked outside, inside this room tonight as far as what things are going to cost, how are things, how are those things going to work? And when will those answers become available? Because if our board has to make a decision and talk about this on Saturday and then, vote on it on Monday and they don't have all of these answers to questions that we have in the community, how do they make an informed decision on which schools? So they will have all the numbers that they need and all of the demographers, all of that, because that's not helpful. The color is very pretty on the wall, but it's not helpful. It's not. We laugh and we joke, but to your point, there are so many families and communities that are going to be negatively impacted if our board can't make the right decision because they don't have the numbers and the data, and everything is changing every single time we come to this meeting. Schools are taken off, schools are put on. This category doesn't count anymore. Today it does. We don't know numbers for transportation. I feel for him. That's a lot of work. But it's also a lot of work to put on the board that has to make a decision that's closing all of these schools. Talk about it on Saturday, make a decision by Monday, and we're letting everybody know on Tuesday. Or they're talking about it on Tuesday and letting everybody know by Wednesday. I mean, if you don't have all of the data that's needed, and then we get mad at the board, right? We go to those board meetings and we're yelling at everybody and we're in public comment and we're taking it out on them, but they don't have everything that they need. There's a lot of questions in this room that were asked and we're not getting the answers. We're really not. And we've got people on both sides of this, right? There are people in this room that do not agree at these meetings that we go to at the board meeting. There are people in here that I can look at the board meeting and be like, oh no, please sit down. But in this community room right here, some people ask some very valid questions, and I have to agree and I have to ask them, please give us those answers, because if we can't make that decision, how do we expect these board members to do that for us?
And I know you said last question, but Mr. Willis did have his hand up the whole time. I just had to throw that out there. Sorry.
There's no more time. The Vader we talked about a little bit. That's still built, but that was more than 90 days ago. And we're only at this point now. We still don't have, this is only $6 to $8 million we're talking about out of a $35 million budget. You know that none of the schools have started master schedule? We don't know how many teachers we need right now. You want to do the things to make your kids be the safest they are? Make your teachers the happiest. Any military brats in here? Are you permanently scarred by moving around? No?
I think
I'm
it
probably
was
a more self-confident, outgoing person because I am a military brat. And I went to 11 different schools before I got to 8th grade. Your kids are super resilient.
That
They're
doesn't
still-
count the sped kids though. My two
No,
sped kids, that does
that can have a
not
thing,
count.
but they may not be changing their teachers. You still have 22-to-1 teachers, right? If they go from Canterwood, that teachers are gonna travel to the schools that the kids go to. It's not like the teachers, the whole thing goes away. It's not the place, it's the people, right? But we don't have any more time for this. We haven't even started, the board hasn't even started the budget process on this. They gotta come up with $28 million in budgeting. This is barely a quarter of what we're out. It's not even a quarter of what we're short right now. Folks, we gotta make these decisions soon. I know that they've been doing their very best. I know people don't like to hear that it's, flying a plane while you're building it, but it kind of is. There's no roadmap for this for Judson. There's no manual to go look at and do. We know these things. And what you guys are doing here is hard work and the rest of it. But realize most of your kids are very resilient. They're going to keep their teachers, most of them. And things are going to be fine. The board has to do this stuff, but we just don't have any more time. We were distracted for 3 months after the debate about all kinds of things except the budget. But now we're getting to the point that we have to pass it soon rather than later. I know I'm not signing a contract until I know what I'm making, which means the board has to be done long before June 1st for stuff. And I hope you don't expect teachers to go ahead and sign a contract that's binding before they know what they're going to make, right? That wouldn't be the right thing to do, do you think? These teachers that are teaching your kids and taking good care of them that you're so passionate about, you're not passionate about the brick and the mortar. You're passionate about the teachers that are teaching your kids in those schools. That's what you're passionate about. It's not add friends, that piece of asphalt over there. It's the teachers that add friends make that place what it is. So it's going to be fine, but we got to move. It's got to be. Well, it is. It is what it is, and we're going to have to deal. But this is where we put up when the Vader didn't pass. This is a choice that you folks made when you didn't vote.
We do want to appreciate all of you.
Cake and eat it too.
Tonight.
Can't have your cake and eat it too, ma'am. I'm sorry, that's the first and the last and the end of that argument. You can't have your cake and eat it too. This is the position you put yourselves in.
All right, Mr. Willis. Thank you, sir. We appreciate everything that we heard tonight, and I hear you, my kids went to school at Spring Meadows, and they went to school at Salinas, and they went to school at Veterans, and Judson, and so we've been here for 26 years, and this is home for us, so everything that everyone's echoing tonight, I feel it. I was just telling my mom, I said, I don't know what I would have done if I was going through this and my kids were still in school, because we were sharing parenting apart, and I don't have a kid sitting in a classroom right now. What we're going to do, because I do value everyone's voice, and I know that some of you probably didn't want to speak tonight, but you're sitting there and you got something to say, we're going to send out a link, and we're going to post the link online tomorrow. The people that are on the committee, you'll get a different type of link, but I'm going to put an open link for just the community. So you can give us some feedback. I'll be busy for the next 2 days with reading through your feedback and trying to make sure that we are providing the board with everything that they need in order to make an informed decision. But I do not want you to feel that if you didn't get the microphone tonight, that what you have to say doesn't matter. It does. And if you didn't get everything off your chest, you'll get an opportunity. We'll send that link out as soon as we can get it together this evening. If it's not posted this evening, we'll post it first thing in the morning. I will leave it open until Friday evening so everyone can get their information out and some of the things that we may not have considered that you may think of as you driving home tonight, that you want to make sure that don't forget to think about this, don't forget to consider this, so I can make sure that the board is informed as most informed as possible when they have to make the vote on Monday and Tuesday. what everybody else would say, where we can submit it. You just submit it. If we have like I can see if we can get an FAQ started. I'm one person, but I can see if I can delegate. We get an FAQ that I think that there's questions in the links that have been sent in that are good for the entire group. And we can do an FAQ page on our campus consolidation. We'll find somewhere to put it so you can see it as soon as you sign on to the website. Yes, ma'am.
Just a quick question. So what is it gonna look like moving forward? Are we gonna continue to meet or the job done now?
We still got some decisions to make after we decide on which ones that we consolidate, because we gotta repurpose campuses also. And so, we are gonna be leaning on our community members, our stakeholders in our community to give us some feedback as we go, through this process. By no means are we done. There's a lot of work that needs to be done before school opens, in August for next school year. So we're going to be coming back to this committee and asking your feedback on other things also. You may not be meeting every single month because we gotta go through this, get the consolidation plan back, and then come back in and whatnot, because we also need to set up the meeting for the communities that we're going to have to consolidate their school. We need Tasha to meet with those people also to get their feedback. Okay? I appreciate y'all, and I appreciate y'all being nice to me, and I appreciate it. Kind of nervous. But thank y'all so much, and I'm gonna give it over to, am I putting it out? You know, thank y'all so much for coming out, and we'll sit down, thank y'all, make sure you give us the feedback, we appreciate it. Come back, you can do it. Bye, ladies. Bye. See ya. Bye.